If you're reading this, pause for just a moment, because what you're about to hear isn't just another story about a flight gone wrong. It's about a man who was looked down upon, disrespected in front of everyone, and yet became the reason that flight even made it back home. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why kindness, even when the world gives you none, can change everything. So before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, because stories like this, they deserve to be remembered. The airport was buzzing that afternoon, children tugging at parents, suitcases rolling, announcements echoing. Among the crowd stood Daniel Miller, a quiet man in his late 30s, dressed in a worn-out army jacket and holding the tiny hand of his 8-year-old daughter, Emily. They were headed home to Ohio after visiting Daniel's late wife's family. She had passed 2 years ago, and every trip back was a wound reopened. Daniel wasn't just a single dad, he was a veteran, carrying scars invisible to most. Emily clutched her stuffed bear and looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "Daddy, are we gonna sit by the window this time?" she asked. Daniel smiled softly. "If we're lucky, sweetheart." He checked their tickets again, economy seats, middle of the plane. But as they walked toward the gate, Daniel noticed something: there were still 2 empty first-class seats on the monitor. He didn't expect special treatment, but Emily had been restless all morning, and he thought maybe, just maybe, they could get lucky. When he approached the desk, the young flight attendant looked up, polite but clearly in a rush. "Excuse me," Daniel said, "I'm traveling with my daughter, and I was wondering if there's any chance we could move to first class. She's been a little sick this morning. I served 12 years in the army, I don't mind paying the upgrade if there's space." Before the attendant could respond, a sharply dressed businessman behind him scoffed. "Oh, here we go," the man muttered. "Always trying to get special treatment." Daniel turned slightly, his jaw tightening. He didn't respond. The attendant smiled awkwardly. "I'm sorry, sir, but first class is reserved. Those seats are taken." The businessman smirked as he handed over his ticket. "First class, of course." Daniel just nodded, thanked her, and walked away with Emily. He didn't let her see the sting behind his calm expression. Once on board, Daniel helped Emily into her seat and tucked her bear beside her. The businessman, whose name, according to his boarding pass, was Mr. Langford, passed by, bumping Daniel's shoulder slightly as he made his way to the front. "Enjoy, coach," he muttered under his breath. Daniel said nothing. Years in the military had taught him how to swallow his pride. But inside, something twisted, not in anger, but in sadness. People saw his faded jacket and assumed it was a plea for sympathy. They never saw what it cost to wear it. The plane took off smoothly. Emily leaned her head against Daniel's arm and dozed off. For the first time in days, he felt a fragile peace. That peace lasted exactly 12 minutes. The captain's voice broke over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing an issue with our hydraulics system. Please remain calm and seated." A ripple of unease moved through the cabin. Flight attendants hurried back and forth, whispers rising into worried murmurs. Daniel's instincts, the soldier's instincts, kicked in. He scanned the cabin, watching the crew, reading their faces. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Moments later, a loud bang shook the plane. Gasps, screams. A flight attendant stumbled, falling near Daniel's row. The oxygen masks dropped. Emily woke up, crying. "Daddy, what's happening?" He squeezed her hand. "It's okay, baby. Look at me. We're gonna be okay." Smoke began to seep from a vent near the front. One of the attendants shouted, "Fire in the cockpit." Panic erupted. Daniel unbuckled his seatbelt, ignoring the trembling around him. "Stay with her," he told the passenger beside Emily. "Don't move her no matter what." He moved fast, past the crying passengers, past the chaos. When he reached the cockpit door, one of the attendants tried to block him. "Sir, you can't. I'm a veteran," he cut in firmly. "Combat engineer. I know what I'm doing." Something in his tone, calm but commanding, made her step aside. Inside the cockpit, smoke clouded the air. The co-pilot was coughing, trying to control the descent. The hydraulic system had failed, and fire was spreading beneath the control panel. Daniel grabbed a fire extinguisher, his hands moving on pure training. He pulled a panel open, found the ruptured valve, and started working. The captain looked at him, eyes wide. You know what you're doing. Enough to get us home, Daniel said. For nearly 8 minutes, he worked alongside the crew, fighting the fire, stabilizing the controls manually. He refused to think about fear, or Emily, or the man in first class who thought so little of him. The only thing that mattered was saving everyone on board. Finally, the captain managed to reroute the systems. The plane steadied. Passengers screamed again, but this time, in relief. When they landed, emergency crews were already waiting. Daniel walked back down the aisle, his shirt stained with smoke and sweat. Emily ran into his arms, crying. He knelt, hugging her tightly. Told you we'd be okay, kiddo. The passengers began to realize what had happened. Whisper after whisper spread. That man saved us. The veteran in coach. And then, as the crowd parted, Mr. Langford, the businessman from first class, stepped forward. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face pale. For a long moment, he just stood there, ashamed. Then, without a word, he held out his hand. I misjudged you, he said quietly. Thank you. Daniel looked at the hand, then at Emily, and finally shook it. Just glad we all made it, he replied. Later, as the passengers disembarked, a flight attendant approached Daniel. Sir, she said softly, tears glimmering in her eyes, we saved this for you. She handed him 2 first-class tickets, for his next flight. He smiled faintly, tucking them into his pocket. Thank you. But honestly, I've already had the best seat in the house. He looked at Emily, who was smiling up at him. Right next to her. If this story touched your heart even a little, take a second right now, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. Because stories like Daniel's remind us, heroes don't always wear capes or sit in first class. Sometimes, they're sitting quietly beside us, unnoticed, until the moment the world needs them most.